Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at one of the most profound shifts in human history. To really get a feel for it, I want you to step into a very specific pair of shoes with me. Just imagine, you and I were master carriage makers, living right in the middle of the 19th century. Our entire world, our craft, our livelihoods, it's all built on wood, leather, iron, and, well, muscle. For literally thousands of years, right up to our time, the world has operated in this very specific, undeniable way. The era of horse-powered civilization has lasted millennia. But within a single lifetime, our familiar, predictable world is going to experience this rapid, completely unprecedented transformation. And it's all brought on by a single machine. Clip, clop, clip, clop. Just think about that rhythm for a second. For thousands of years, that was the defining sound of human civilization. And as carriage makers, that's the heartbeat of our industry. Empires rose to that sound, Kingdoms fell to it. Entire continents were explored to the steady, rhythmic beat of hooves on dirt. Every single thing moved strictly at the speed of muscle. Honestly, no one even imagined the world would ever move faster than a galloping horse.
But then, the rumbling started. Now, at first, as proud craftsmen, we laughed. People looked at this early machine and just dismissed it as like a noisy toy. Lots of folks believed there was absolutely no way it would ever replace the reliable horse. In fact, a lot of people were terrified of it. Governments were constantly questioning it, and honestly, why wouldn't they? Think about the world we lived in back then. Cities just weren't built for machines. Paved roads, they barely existed. Fuel stations, mechanics, traffic laws, none of those things were even a thought yet. The entire infrastructure for what we now know as the modern automobile was just a total blank slate.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because what happened next was nothing short of a tidal wave. Within just a few decades, this strange, loud, totally controversial machine just obliterated our carriage industry, and it completely transformed everything else. It reshaped every single city, laying down pavement where mud used to rule. It revolutionized every economy. It changed the very nature of every war. It touched and transformed nearly every human life on Earth. The sheer, unavoidable scale of this invention is just staggering. Chapter 1: The Era of Muscle. So let's set the scene here and really understand the world before the engine came along. Imagine waking up and walking out into the bustling streets of London, Paris, or New York in the 1850s. The streets were absolutely alive, literally filled with millions of horses. And as carriage makers, we were right at the center of it all. Horses pulled our carriages, they delivered the food, transported families, moved soldiers, carried the mail. Every little thing depended on muscle. But man, we faced some severe limitations. Travel was agonizingly slow. Long journeys took days, sometimes weeks. Bad weather could literally bring an entire metropolis to a complete standstill. The wagon wheels, the very wheels you and I built, would just get swallowed by mud. Snow would entirely block the roads. Commerce was totally held hostage by the physical limits of animals. Yet, beneath the surface, inventors across Europe shared this quiet, seemingly impossible dream. A carriage that could move completely without horses.
Chapter 2: The First Horseless Carriages.
Now, the very first attempts to make this dream a reality were frankly terrifying. Throughout the 18th and early 19th centuries, these initial steam-powered road vehicles started popping up. As traditional carriage makers, we probably looked at these things with a mix of utter awe and pure horror. They were enormous. They were incredibly heavy, incredibly slow, and just ridiculously difficult to control. Some of them could barely even make it up a hill. Plus, they famously frightened horses and pedestrians alike. Actually, governments in some places slapped them with super strict regulations just to try and limit their use. They were, without a doubt, clumsy beasts. But despite all these massive shortcomings, they proved one undeniable, world-changing concept. A vehicle could move using its own engine. The idea just refused to die. Inventors kept experimenting, pushing to find lighter engines and new fuels, knowing that every single failure was just a step closer to getting it right.
Chapter 3: The Internal Combustion Breakthrough. Let's move to Haya and see how this builds.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the massive engineering leap it represents. This is the big move away from those massive, terrifying steam boilers. Engineers finally developed the internal combustion engine. Instead of using heavy, super dangerous steam pressure, they figured out how to create power internally. Let's walk through the sheer elegance of how this works. First, they ignite a mixture of fuel and air right inside a cylinder. Second, these tiny controlled explosions actually push the pistons. Third, those moving pistons turn a crankshaft. And finally, step 4, that crankshaft turns the wheels. This one process made engines exponentially lighter, faster, and truly practical for road travel. Honestly, it was the absolute death knell for our horse-drawn carriage industry, even if we didn't quite know it yet.
And that brings us to a truly pivotal year, 1886. This was the year a pioneer named Karl Benz took this mechanical theory and transformed it into practical reality. He patented a three-wheeled motor vehicle powered by an internal combustion engine. Now, obviously, to our 19th century craftsman eyes, it looked highly unusual. It was slow, and a lot of folks still highly doubted it would ever amount to anything. But this patent, right here in 1886, that was the official spark of the modern transportation revolution.
Chapter 4. Bertha Benz's historic journey.
But having a working prototype is one thing. Actually changing the world, that's a whole different story. Innovation always requires proof. And that proof, it came through a stealthy, high-stakes road trip. Karl Benz's wife, Bertha Benz, realized that the public desperately needed to see this car in action. So without even telling her husband, she packed up two of their sons and set out on a long-distance journey in the Benz motor wagon. Out on the road, she essentially became the world's first mechanic. To a traditional wood and leather craftsman like us, her resourcefulness would have been unimaginable. She found fuel wherever she could, literally solving practical, complex mechanical problems on the fly. When she finally arrived, she proved once and for all that the automobile could travel far beyond short little test drives. Her impact was massive. Not only did she identify vital mechanical improvements based on the trip, but more importantly, she convinced the public that the automobile actually had a future. She literally drove the car out of obscurity.
Chapter 5. Mass production and modernity.
Even with Bertha's incredibly successful journey, automobiles still remained this rare, highly expensive luxury. To truly replace our carriages, the automobile needed a totally new kind of innovation, the Ford Revolution. And this brilliantly illustrates how the big leap here wasn't a new engine, it was a new way of building. Henry Ford fundamentally transformed manufacturing by introducing the moving assembly line. For us carriage makers, well, this was the final, inescapable blow to our trade. Production costs plummeted drastically. Because of that, cars went from being fancy toys for the ultra-rich to being accessible to millions of everyday people. And once millions had cars, the world physically changed. Suburbs developed because suddenly people could commute. Cities expanded outward. Huge road networks grew like vines across the country. Businesses could reach entirely new markets. Henry Ford ensured that the rhythm of daily life was permanently changed. Chapter 6. A World Transformed. So let's take a breath, step out of our 19th century carriage maker shoes, and step right back into today. Over a century later, let's just reflect on what this single invention has actually done. Today, the automobile is completely, seamlessly woven into our modern existence. It connects our families across vast distances. It is the absolute backbone supporting global trade. It dictates how we design our modern cities. It drives global tourism. It even enables our emergency services to save lives. It's almost impossible to imagine modern life without it. And it's not stopping. It continues to evolve right now with electric vehicles, autonomous technologies, and entirely new forms of mobility. So the crucial point is this. The story of the automobile isn't really just a story about machines or metal or internal combustion. It is, fundamentally, a story about human curiosity. It's about brilliant engineering. It's about immense persistence. It's the story of our relentless belief that tomorrow can and absolutely should move faster than today. The very first automobile wasn't the fastest machine. It wasn't the most beautiful, and it certainly wasn't the most powerful. But it proved that a single invention, when combined with human determination, can completely reshape civilization. Every engine that starts up today, every road that stretches toward the horizon, it carries a small piece of that first impossible dream. As this quote perfectly summarizes, history is rarely changed by the loudest invention. It is changed by the one that quietly changes how humanity lives. Which leaves us with a fascinating thought to take away today. If a clunky, three-wheeled carriage completely redefined human civilization over the last century, what modern invention is quietly changing our future right now?